You know, like I go Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber and close the doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in session. Leader Lamberth, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to dispense with the calling of the roll.
Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House is ready for item 21 on the regular calendar. Item 21, Senate Joint Resolution 2 by Representative Todd and others, a resolution to propose an amendment to Article 11 of the Constitution of Tennessee relative to the right to work.
Chairman Todd, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I request the clerk read Senate Joint Resolution 2 for its third and final reading.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Senate Joint Resolution 2, a resolution to propose an amendment to Article 11 of the Constitution of Tennessee relative to the right to work. Whereas Senate Joint Resolution number 648 of the 111th General Assembly, known as the, quote, Right to Work Amendment, end quote, which proposed an amendment of Article 11 of the Constitution of Tennessee relative to the right to work, was considered and agreed upon by a majority of all the members elected to each of the two houses, as shown by the yeas and nays entered on their journals. And whereas such resolution proposing such amendment was published in accordance with Article 11, Section 3 of the Constitution of Tennessee, and whereas protecting the right of Tennesseans to join or refuse to join a labor union or employee organization is a fundamental civil right, and whereas this right to work has played a crucial role in Tennessee's thriving economy, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the House of Representatives concurring, that 2/3 majority of all the members of each house concurring, as shown by the yeas and nays entered on their journals, that it is proposed that Article 11 of the Constitution of Tennessee be amended by adding the following language as a new section. It is unlawful for any person, corporation, association, or this state or its political subdivisions to deny or attempt to deny employment to any person by reason of the person's membership in, affiliation with, resignation from, or refusal to join or affiliate with any labor union or employee organization. Be it further resolved that in accordance with Article 11, Section 3 of the Constitution of Tennessee, the foregoing proposed amendment shall be submitted to the people at the next general election in which a governor is to be chosen, the same being the 2022 November general election. And the Secretary of State is directed to place such proposed amendment on the ballot for that election. Be it further resolved that the Clerk of the Senate is directed to deliver copies of this resolution to the Secretary of State, with this final resolving clause being deleted from such copies.
Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur in Senate Joint Resolution 2.
Chairman Todd moves to concur in Senate Joint Resolution 2. Any discussion? Representative Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to, well, I sit here anyway, to oppose this right to work going into the Constitution. I am what's considered a labor Democrat. That's what I am. I grew up in a family. My grandfathers were coal miners. My mother was labor management relations for 20 years. It's put a lot of food on my table. And I learned a lot about the history of labor growing up and what it did for families at a time when labor was at its strongest, middle class was at its strongest. And there were many benefits, and because of labor, there was child labor laws, and there was minimum wage and the 40-hour work week. These are very important benefits, health benefits that contributed to the workforce. And when you had a strong middle class like that, you had movements. You had civil rights movements and labor movements and environmental movements, and women had women's rights movements. But the middle class is starting just to shrink drastically. And it was more in the late 70s when the executive was making 30, 40 times what the worker was making. Now it's more 300, 400 times what the worker is making. Amazon's not paying any taxes. It's getting to where I've got welfare here, I've got corporate welfare here, and middle class is in the middle, is shrinking every day. We're just getting popped. Labor was also in a time they're more than, it's more than a union. 30 years ago when I broke my neck and I was in a car accident, I went to come home. My home was not very accessible. The carpenters came out and built me a ramp. The pipe fitters came out and fixed me up a bathroom. The tile workers came out to make sure it was safe. It's more than brothers and sisters of a union. They were there for me. And the funny thing is that I really don't even consider a Republican Democratic issue. If you were to poll probably labor and union members right now, 70% of them would be Republican. But I tell you what, they're getting a good wage. Because listen, when management is making $200 million a year, by gosh, they should get $40 or $50 an hour. They really should. And I realize that, you know, and I really don't want to get into the aspects of labor and capitalism and right to work, but the capitalism, sometimes you have to put guardrails on it. That's why we live in a mixed economy. Sometimes government has to say, wait a second, you're going too far. Theodore Roosevelt did this. Lyndon Johnson did this. It's a check. We've dismantled the middle class, and it's shrinking every day. And the parity is getting wider and wider and wider. But when you got a good labor job, you've got benefits, and you've got a good, strong hourly wage, you're able to not only provide for your family, but provide for your community. I understand, since 1947, this has been on the books. And believe me, Democrats have had chances to repeal this over the years. They haven't done it. And they surely hadn't put it in the Constitution. When you talk about the Constitution, this is supposed to guide us in the future. Over 10,000 amendments have been proposed to the U.S. Constitution, 27 have passed. Because it's supposed to guide us. It's what you can't think of. I made a joke over here earlier. You don't put disco in the Constitution, right? Because it's temporary. So I just want to say that, and especially to my colleagues on the right aisle, labor unions are not boogeymen. They're just there for the working class. And so I am opposed to putting this in the Constitution. And I just would hope that people will know, at least in my heart, that I'm always going to be for the working class and have them at least have some kind of wage and benefits. And I just wanted to speak from the heart today. I didn't have any talking points. I just the way I felt. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much, and I would urge those to oppose to put in the Constitution. Thank you.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I stand before you today, I don't think I can disagree with much of anything my colleague just said. I too grew up in a home where my dad was a union worker all of my life. It put food on our tables. It put me through school and got me to where I am today. So what we're doing today, if it had anything to do with taking down unions, I would not be standing here. I can assure you of that. They have made a significant difference in this country, and this protects the union workers as well as non-union workers. That's the way it's structured. That's the way the law has been. Tomorrow, if we pass this today and the citizens voted on it today to put it in our Constitution, nothing would change tomorrow over what we're already doing today. So I appreciate your comments, sir. And like I said, I don't disagree with you.
Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to rise and join the comments of my friend down the hall from me, down this line of desk. Folks, I think it's appropriate for the constitutional amendment from the sense that no one should be forced to join a union or have to pay union dues if you don't want to work at a place of employment. On the other side of that, I don't think a union should be required to represent every worker, whether they're a member or not. That's the current state of federal law. The law does allow voluntary associations if the employer, the non-union employees, and the union all agree that they'll have representation by a non-union group in employment. And that's according to Professor William Gould, Stanford University, who was the chairman of the U.S. National Labor Relations Board from 1994 to 1998, according to the email provided to me. Whether you're for or against union, I just hope everyone in this House chamber shares my passion and will work with me and all of us together that we put Americans first, American families first, and Tennesseans first. It all comes down to jobs. And I'll pay 3 cents more for a soda can or whatever it is if that job is done in Tennessee or in America rather than in China, Mexico, or some other place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to make a statement concerning something that was just said about unions having to represent, by federal law, having to represent non-union members. And he quoted someone that I have a quote from here as well. Federal law, this is not a quote yet, but federal law does not require unions to negotiate and represent non-union members. Under the National Labor Relations Act, a union can choose to represent only dues-paying members in what is called a membership-only contract. Under a members-only contract, the benefits secured by the union would only apply to its members. In fact, former chairman of the National Labor Relations Board, William Gould, has noted the law now permits member-only bargaining for employees. Unions choose to be a monopoly in a work unit so that other unions don't come in and compete with them. Once they make that choice, then federal law says they're required to represent non-union members. It is a choice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion? See. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I see where SJR is sponsored by the senator from Shelby County. In my tenure here, this one senator has attempted to tamper with the Constitution, the Tennessee Constitution, more than any other individual I know of. And I've just come to the conclusion that he simply just doesn't like the Tennessee Constitution. I don't even think he respects it because he's always tampering with it. And I just hope that this body will send a message to that senator. Enough is enough. Let's stop tampering with the Constitution. That is a good Constitution, one of the best Constitutions. But if we continue year after year amending it for the wrong reasons. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, my participation here has nothing to do with what the other chamber's doing. This is simply to put this choice into the citizens' hand, your constituents' hands, and let them decide next year whether they want to put this into our Constitution. It's been in our law for almost 75 years, has not been tampered with, and we want to make sure that, number one, we can secure our freedoms in this state that we have created in this state from federal overreach. And we want to make sure that businesses that want to come here and employ our people and provide those better jobs and better wages, as has been mentioned, are free to do so and know what the rules are when they arrive. So it's up to our citizens whether they do this or not. We're just giving them that opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since their Constitution has been mentioned several times, I think it's appropriate that I cite Tennessee Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, powers of the people, that all power is inherent in the people, and that all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their peace, safety, and happiness. for the advancement of those ends that they have had at all times an unalienable and indefeasible right to alter, reform, or abolish the government in such manner as they think proper. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Sparks.
Yeah. With sponsor you,
Yes, sir.
sponsor, I've been kind of torn on this issue. I really have. I had a constituent mail me a book, and I mentioned that book on the floor last week, and it's called Courageous Faith by Alan Jackson, pastor in Murfreesboro. Today it was day 58, called Taking the Time to Listen. That's the scripture today, taking the time to listen, day 58. So I've kind of listened to a lot of folks. Had a lot of folks come by my office, and I appreciate those folks. They may not have voted for me last time, and that's okay. They're always welcome to my office, and I thank them for it. But I also see a slippery slope that we're going down if we're not careful. I think when we start messing with the Constitution, we need to be extremely cautious. I even went back and read the state Constitution the other night just to study it, and because I get a little nervous when we start going down these roads. I see GM in Spring Hill bringing $2.3 billion worth of investment, 1,300 jobs. I see perma-temps across our state, perma-temps. Sometimes those companies are given a lot of tax abatement, tax incentives. We're invested. My constituents are invested. But I guess when you look at decisions like this, like Proverbs says, there's wisdom in the multitude of counselors. Wisdom in the multitude of counselors. I've been listening to everybody I could. And if I be, listen to them, Jim Brown, listen to AFL-CIO, listen to these other folks. Beacon Center, got a lot of respect for them. Listen to AFP and other constituents. At the end of the day, I'm going to support your bill. I've talked to you about the bill. I've told you I've had concerns. Sometimes when you say you're on the fence, it's a good thing because everybody starts rushing to your office. It's kind of neat when they start doing that. If you're all in, they don't come see you. I just think we need to be real cautious. But at the end of the day, the people are going to be able to vote for this. The people are going to be able to vote. So I'm going to support your legislation. I just think we need to be cautious when we start tinkering with the Constitution. Thank you.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do agree. I think the Constitution is a document that we need to be very careful with. And you'll have another opportunity to revisit that thought in a few minutes, I think. But right now, this is to give the citizens an opportunity to do what you just said, ensure the environment that we already have in this state that protects the union workers and non-union alike. We are drawing those businesses to Tennessee to employ our workers and make our lives better here, and the lives of our citizens, for this very reason, because this law is on the books. That's one of the many tools that we have in our repertoire here in this state, the way this is run, to provide those opportunities. And I want to continue that and give our citizens the opportunity for that, to solidify that in our Constitution. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Johnson and Knox. Passes. Representative Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, some of the greatest philosophers have often agreed that the single greatest right we have as humans is the right of our own conscience. To be able to establish our own thoughts and have the freedom of your own conscience. I was interested when I walked in to see people on both sides in the balcony who were passionate about this issue. Both sides of the coin, whether we should have this in the Constitution, whether we should allow the people to decide on this or whether we shouldn't. And as I watched them standing on either side of this coin, I thought to myself how detrimental it would be if those who are very passionate about a certain issue could come in and say, you will vote the way we tell you to vote. Can you imagine if someone came in and said, this is no option for you. You will vote this way. You have no other option. Because that would deny your right of conscience, your right to establish your own thoughts. This constitutional amendment is that simple. We don't need to make it any more difficult. What we're saying is that any worker in Tennessee has the ability for their own conscience to decide whether or not I want to be a part of an organization or not. It's that simple. We are saying in Tennessee, as a worker, you are protected from here on out from somebody who would look at you and say, I force you to join our organization and give our organization money. Regardless if you like the organization or not, or support the organization or not, that's the beauty of conscience. And you can decide whether you like it or not. But none of us, all 99 of us, should collectively stand together and say, we agree that nobody should come in and force you and say, you will pay dues. You will join us regardless if you want to or not. That's the simple thing we're doing. We're giving Tennesseans the right to choose to say, from here on out, the history of our state, no one bigger than me, no one stronger than me will look at me and say, we will take the money out of your account. You will join us. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope we pass this today, and I hope the state of Tennessee passes it. And that's not a slight at any union. I think they obviously have their place, but their place should not be a place where they force you against your own conscience. I support your idea.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker Sexton. And everybody else has given their bona fides. My dad been in unions when he was a young man, everything from driving taxis in the big city, Chicago, New York, to steel mills in Pittsburgh, to his final passion, which was as an educator. And he was one of the founding members for the Memphis Education Association. What I have never experienced is some of the allegations and the myths about how bad unions are and what they'll do to those who don't want to join day to day. You know, some of you might think that it means nothing for a union household, especially those in communities of color, to be able to get a safe workplace and equal rights, and to be able to have income that's comparable to the majority of the population. So recognizing that there's a civil rights aspect to the existence of unions and their ability to function. And I've read the National Labor Relations Act, and I don't see most of the stuff that you've talked about. So I'm just perplexed. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. I don't understand why we keep trifling with the Constitution. With the Constitution, every time that we have a statutory issue, we run and decide that we're going to maim the Constitution. I don't know what happened to the respect for the Constitution. But the things that I've heard you discuss, I think are statutorily possible to address those. And unfortunately, I cannot, or fortunately, I cannot support your resolution. But thank you for listening, sir.
Representative Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call previous question.
Previous question been called. Any objection? Seeing no objection. All those in favor of Senate Joint Resolution 2, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Garrett, aye. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 67, 24 nay, one present, not voting.
After being read 3 times on 3 separate days, Senate Joint Resolution 2, having received a vote in the affirmative by 2/3 majority of the members of the Tennessee House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly, I hereby declare it concurred and pursuant to Article 11, Section 3 of the Constitution of the State of Tennessee. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 535 by Representative Lamar and others, a resolution to honor and commend Michael Working for his exemplary service as a 2020-2021 President of the Tennessee Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers.
Representative Lamar, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for adoption of HJR 0535.
Representative Lamar moves adoption, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Lamar, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is simply a congratulatory resolution to recognize Mr. Michael Working for his service as the 2020-2021 President of the Tennessee Association of Criminal Defense Attorneys. He is also distinguished himself as an attorney of the greatest ability, integrity, and valuable asset to his colleagues in the criminal defense law. It was objected to initially yesterday, but I worked it out with our sponsor, with Representative Gann, and I'm excited to offer my congratulatory to him and the criminal defense attorneys. And I must take personal privilege and say I've known Mr. Working for several years. His wife was my U.S. history teacher, is one of the main reasons why I decided to work for office, because she got me very interested in U.S. government. So with that, I'll renew my motion.
Representative Lamar renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 535, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 70, 14 nays, one present, not voting.
House Joint Resolution 535, having received the Constitution majority, I hereby declare it adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Joint Resolution 10 by Leader Lambert, the resolution proposing an amendment to Article 2 and Article 3 of the Constitution of Tennessee relative to the exercise of the powers and duties of the governor during disability.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request the clerk read SJR 10 as amended for its second reading.
Mr. Clerk, please read the caption or resolution.
Senate Joint Resolution 10, a resolution proposing an amendment to Article 2 and Article 3 of the Constitution of Tennessee relative to the exercise of the powers and duties of the governor during disability. Whereas the welfare and stability of the state are best served if a qualified person with governmental experience is immediately available to assume the powers and duties of the office of governor when the governor is unable to do so. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the House of Representatives concurring, that a 2/3 majority of all the members of each house concurring, as shown by the yeas and nays entered on their journals, that it is proposed that Article 3, Section 12 of the Constitution of Tennessee be amended by adding the following language immediately following the current language in the section. Whenever the governor transmit to the Secretary of State, the Speaker of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives a written signed declaration that the governor is unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office, the powers and duties of the office of governor shall be temporarily discharged by the Speaker of the Senate as acting governor, or if that office is unoccupied, then by the Speaker of the House of Representatives as acting governor, until the governor transmit to the same officials a written signed declaration that the governor is able to discharge the powers and duties of the office. Whenever a majority of the commissioners of administrative departments of the executive department transmits to the Secretary of State, the Speaker of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written signed declaration that the governor is unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office, the Speaker of the Senate shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting governor, or if the office is unoccupied, the Speaker of the House of Representatives shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting governor until the governor transmit to the same officials a written signed declaration that the governor is able to discharge the powers and duties of the office. Whenever a speaker is temporarily discharging the powers and duties of the office of governor as acting governor, such speaker shall not be required to resign the speaker's position as the speaker or to resign as a member of the General Assembly, and shall retain the speaker's salary and not receive the governor's salary. But such speaker shall not preside as speaker or vote as a member of the General Assembly during the time the speaker is acting governor. Be it further resolved that it is proposed that Article 3, Section 13 of the Constitution of Tennessee be amended by adding the following language immediately before the period at the end of the section. Except as provided in Article 3, Section 12 with regard to the Speaker of the Senate or the Speaker of the House of Representatives temporarily discharging the powers and duties of the office of governor as acting governor, be it further resolved that it is proposed that Article 2, Section 26 of the Constitution of Tennessee be amended by adding the following language at the end of the section. This section shall not apply with regard to the Speaker of the Senate or the Speaker of the House of Representatives temporarily discharging the powers and duties of the office of governor as acting governor under Article 3, Section 12. Be it further resolved that in accordance with Article 11, Section 3 of the Constitution of Tennessee, the foregoing proposed amendment shall be submitted to the people at the next general election in which a governor is to be chosen, the same being the 2022 November general election, and the Secretary of State is directed to place such proposed amendment on the ballot for that election. Be it further resolved that the Clerk of the Senate is directed to deliver copies of this resolution to the Secretary of State, with this final resolving clause being deleted from such copies.
Lear Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that SJR 10 is amended to be set for its third and final reading on Monday, May the 3rd, 2021.
Without objection, so ordered. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 98 by Representative Towns, a resolution to propose an amendment to Article 1, Section 33 of the Constitution of Tennessee to prohibit slavery and involuntary servitude. Mr. Speaker, the Senate Joint Resolution is on the desk.
Representative Towns, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Mr. Speaker, I move to substitute conform to SJR 80 for HJR 98.
Representative Towns moves to substitute Senate Joint Resolution 80 for House Joint Resolution 98. Representative Towns, you're recognized.
And with that, Mr. Speaker, I request that the clerk read SJR 80 for its first reading.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Senate Joint Resolution 80, a resolution to propose an amendment to Article 1, Section 33 of the Constitution of Tennessee to prohibit slavery and involuntary servitude. Whereas Senate Joint Resolution number 159 of the 111th General Assembly, which proposed amendment of Article 1 of the Constitution of Tennessee relative to prohibiting slavery and involuntary servitude, was considered and agreed upon by a majority of all the members elected to each of the two houses, as shown by the yeas and nays entered on their journals. And whereas such resolution proposing such amendment was published in accordance with Article 11, Section 3 of the Constitution of Tennessee, and whereas freedom from slavery and involuntary servitude is a right of every individual within the United States and any place subject to its jurisdiction, which right is secured by the 13th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, and whereas the Tennessee General Assembly ratified the 13th Amendment in April 1865, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the House of Representatives concurring, that a 2/3 majority of all the members of each house concurring, as shown by the yeas and nays entered on their journals, that it is proposed that Article 1, Section 33 of the Constitution of Tennessee be amended by deleting the section and substituting instead the following. Section 33, slavery and involuntary servitude are forever prohibited. Nothing in this section shall prohibit an inmate from working when the inmate has been duly convicted of a crime. Be it further resolved that in accordance with Article 11, Section 3 of the Constitution of Tennessee, the foregoing proposed amendment shall be submitted to the people at the next general election in which a governor is to be chosen, the same being the 2022 November general election. And the Secretary of State is directed to place such proposed amendment on the ballot for that election. Be it further resolved that the Clerk of the Senate is directed to deliver copies of this resolution to the Secretary of State, with this final resolving clause being deleted from such copies.
Representative Towns, you're recognized.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that SJR 80 be set for its second reading on Monday, May 3rd.
Without objection, so ordered. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1015 by Chairman Hicks, relative to discount plans. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1271.
Chairman Hicks moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1271, probably second. Without objection, so ordered. Chairman Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1271 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Hicks moves passage of Senate Bill 1271 on third and final consideration. Properly second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Insurance Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker. It's similar to Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kumar, you are recognized. Chairman Kumar, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This language is included in the Senate amendment. For that reason, move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Senate Bill 1271 simply expands the voluntary RX plan to include plans that cover dental and vision services and codifies existing practice. With that, I renew my motion.
Chairman Hicks renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1271 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Leatherwood, aye. Hardaway, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
Senate Bill 1271, having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 490 by Representative Cooper, a resolution to recognize Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Day, May 6, 2021. Mr. Speaker, this is the heel of the regular calendar. It's item 19.
Representative Cooper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Oh, I got the wrong thing. I move adoption of House Joint Resolution 490.
Representative Cooper moves adoption, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, House Amendment 1 by Representative Cooper. Mr. Speaker, it was not timely filed. The sponsors allowed a 1-minute explanation.
Representative Cooper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Joint Resolution 490 simply recognizes and acknowledges and respects the work and dedication of our public safety officer members who put their lives at risk every day to serve and protect the public without regard to race, color, and creed. Furthermore, we recognize the complex challenges that law enforcement confronts and faces throughout our state, as well as they are recognizing the police departments, elected officials, individual officers, public safety unions, John D. Cooper of the Memphis Fire Department, Frank Boyd Sr. of Alabama, law enforcement, and community leaders who have roles to play in putting an end to and they support programs that take a comprehensive and inclusive look at community-based programs addressing core issues such as poverty, education, health, and safety. This is a resolution coming from the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, of which I am a member of. I move to consideration of the amendment.
You have heard the motion. We are voting for consideration of amendment number 1. All those in favor of considering amendment number 1, vote aye when the bell rings. All those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 86, no nays.
In accordance with Rule 60B, having received the necessary 2/3, the motion to consider amendment number 1 prevails. Representative Cooper, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption.
Representative Cooper moves adoption of amendment number 1. All those in favor, any discussion? Properly seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendment.
Representative Cooper, you're recognized.
I renew my motion.
Representative Cooper renews your motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 490 amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 85, no nays, 3 present, on voting.
House Joint Resolution 490, having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare it adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the regular calendar.
Next calendar, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a message calendar.
Call the first message, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 619 by Representative Rutter relative to insurance companies, agents, brokers, and policies. Mr. Speaker, on April 27, 2021, the Senate substituted House Bill 619 for Senate Bill 1397, adopted Amendment 1, and passed House Bill 619 as amended.
Representative Rutter, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment number 1, no, got to get this right. I move to concur with Senate Amendment number 1.
Representative Rutter moves to concur in Senate Amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Amendment number 1, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Hardaway, aye. Freeman, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 88, no nays.
Senate Amendment number 1, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it concurred in without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 830 by Chairman Kumar relative to consumer protection. Mr. Speaker, on April 28, 2021, the Senate lifted the tabling motion, reconsidered its action in passing House Bill 830, withdrew Senate Amendment 1, adopted Senate Amendment 2, and passed House Bill 830 as amended.
Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur to Senate Amendment number 2.
Chairman Kumar moves to concur in Senate Amendment number 2, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Amendment number 2, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays.
Senate Amendment number 2, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it concurred in without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1145 by Representative Grills relative to criminal offenses. Mr. Speaker, on April 27, 2021, the Senate substituted House Bill 1145 for Senate Bill 285, adopted Amendment 1, and passed House Bill 1145 as amended.
Representative Grills, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur to Senate Amendment number 1.
Representative Grills moved to concur in Senate Amendment number 1, probably second. Any discussion on the bill? Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could you discuss what that amendment is doing? Thank you.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, what this did, the original bill put farm in with the public utility sector, and this amendment just separates the farm and the public utilities because the farm can be private.
Any further discussion? Leader Camper's good. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Amendment number 1, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, as any member wish to change their Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays, one present, not voting.
Senate Amendment number 1, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare concurred in without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the message calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 580 be heard in the Education Administration Committee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As announced yesterday by the Speaker, we will now be taking up the flow motion. Mr. Speaker, I move that portions of the following rules be suspended for the remainder of the 2021 session. Rule number 17, so that all congratulatory memorializing resolutions can be placed directly on the next consent calendar. Rule number 49, the 48-hour rule, so that all bills moved from calendar rules can be set on the next floor calendar. Rule number 49, the 25-bill limit rule, so that more than 25 bills may be placed on the calendar for final consideration on any one day. Rule number 50, the 72-hour rule for posting the consent calendar, so that local bills and other bills and resolutions coming out of the calendar and rules can be placed on the next consent calendar on a daily basis. Rule number 59, notice provision, so that all bills from the Senate with messages can be announced and or automatically placed on the next message calendar. Rule number 67, so that committee and subcommittee meetings can be held at times other than those specified in the House weekly schedule with less than 72 hours notice. Rule number 71, the 24-hour rule requiring all amendments to be available to members 24 hours for consideration on the floor. Rule number 83, subpart 1, so that all bills reported out of subcommittee can be heard on the next full committee calendar without waiting a week. Rule number 83, subpart 1, so that all bills reported out of committee can be heard in the next committee or subcommittee without waiting a week. Rule number 83, subpart 1, so that items in committee and subcommittee can be placed on the next calendar notwithstanding the Wednesday 3:30 deadline for placing bills on notice. Thank you, Mr.
You've heard the motion, properly seconded. Any objection? Representative Stewart.
I asked this question yesterday. I just want to ask one question of the leader.
Okay.
Question is, Leader, could you just confirm, and I think you just said this, I just want to make sure we're clear. We're again just suspending the rules or the flow motion that we've always suspended. So those of us who've been here, for example, last summer or last year, will be experiencing a set of rules that are identical to the rules that we've used before. There's nothing new in this. Is that correct?
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I have announced are the rules that were provided yesterday, as have been read, and those are the only ones that I am moving to be suspended at this juncture.
Representative Stewart. All right. Any further discussion? Any objection? Seeing none, without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk. Oh, Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On unfinished business, Mr. Speaker, every year this time of year, we nominate a chairman of the paper drive. And Mr. Speaker, because this freshman class is so exceptional, we do have kind of a holdover from last year who's really good at stuff like this. So by the power vested in me by the great state of Tennessee, I would like to nominate Representative Bruce Griffey as the chairman of the paper drive. Y'all make sure you take him your stuff, because he is going to be a fabulous chair and take notes on everything that you do.
Chairman Faison, that's usually not unfinished. That is under welcoming and honoring the chairman of the paper drive. Next time we do that, please make sure you do it under welcoming and honoring. Representative Towns, unfinished business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is probably out of order, but somebody has lost their key, a Fiat key, and I'm sure they're going to need it in a little bit. It's at my desk here. I don't know who lost it, but it was over here, so you may want to come and get it.
Anybody claiming the Fiat? Del Carr, can you start the auction, please? We have no takers. I'm sorry. All right, next order.
Announcements.
Announcements. Chairman White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Education Administration Committee will meet Monday morning at 9:30 in House Hearing Room 1. Thank you.
Very good. Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As announced yesterday, and a reminder, the Government Operations Committee will be meeting Monday morning at 9 a.m. in House Hearing Room 1 for 2 bills. Again, Government Operations Committee meeting Monday morning at 9 a.m. House Hearing Room 1.
Representative Love.
Thank you, Speaker. Members, as many of you are aware, Senator Harper's celebration of life services will be starting Monday through Thursday. On Wednesday, her body will be here to lie in state at the library on this floor from 10 a.m. to 2 o'clock. So please make yourselves aware of that from 10 a.m. to 2, she'll be lying in state here. Please keep the family in your prayers for next week. Thank you.
Chairman Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As member of Finance, Ways and Means Subcommittee will be meeting Monday, House Hearing Room 1 at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock Monday.
Any further announcements? Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members' calendar and rules will meet immediately following Finance on Monday. And then second announcement, if the State Museum is looking for the plexiglass that was around the speaker stand, it may be out back on the balcony. Thank you.
I have an announcement on that. Chairman Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It probably goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Finance Full will meet immediately following Finance Sub on Monday.
Any further announcements? Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my wife sent me a text earlier wanting to thank all of the General Assembly and you, Mr. Speaker, for getting us out of here today, because tomorrow is her birthday. And because we got done today, I'm going to get to spend tomorrow with her, and she's extremely excited about that. So the rest of my colleagues, thank you so much for allowing me to be able to leave with my wife tomorrow. So,
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I don't even know the young man's name, but I think the young man that's been sanitizing our podium, we ought to give him a big hand, because we ran him to death this week.
Any further announcements? All right, well, I did, which way? Oh, Representative Calfee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just talked to Coach Byrd. He's been in Vanderbilt about 10 days. They've done a biopsy today or yesterday. Won't know the results for a few days, but he's about to go back to rehab. So that's the latest on him. And I don't know if I said this morning or not, but Mike Carter's really struggling. Thank you. Be praying for him.
Thank you. And my appreciation to the 4 ghosts who were up here today to try to remove the plastic. The good news is I can feel the air condition coming on my face, so thank you all very much. Although I will say everybody looked better through the plastic than through the real life, but no offense to anybody. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just need to see the members of the freshman class at my desk right after our session, please. Thank you.
Very good. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Well, roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 91 members present.
Leader Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 4 p.m. Monday, May 3rd, 2021.
Without objection, the House stands in recess till 4 p.m. on Monday, May 3rd, 2021.